I don't want to hear about this ever again. Not even when they say it, Spency, tell them again. You've got to listen to my words, yeah. All I gotta do is put my mind to this shit. What's up, my dudes? Hey, you remember when all those MX Bikes fanboys were trying to act like I just sucked at MX Bikes and I just couldn't figure the game out? Look at that, Spencer. He can't even figure the game out. Oh, man. Look at that beginner. He was so good at MX Simulator and he just couldn't figure MX Bikes out. Oh, man. Boy, that's funny, ain't it? Just like I told you. Just give me a split second to even actually care enough about the game to even try to go fast in the game. And here's the result. Okay? Exactly like I said. Give me 5 seconds to even put a little bit of effort into the game, and you will see the result of that. And here it is. Trust me, there's always proof to the pudding with the Spency boy. Always, dog. Always. You can bet on me. So, ever since I said MX Bikes was easy, we've been getting a lot of these comments talking about, well, Spence, you need to go ride on the newer Supercross tracks. Spence, go ride on some harder Supercross tracks. And I just recently got a comment on my last video saying, hey, go ride on this new ARL training Supercross track. It's got a really gnarly whoop section in it, and it's going to be, actual skill gap for you. So, here we are on this ARL training Supercross track, whatever the heck it is. Okay, so this is about, this is pretty much top of the line difficulty, I would say, on Supercross tracks on MX Bikes. Certainly the whoop section, this is the hardest whoop section I have ever rode on any track on MX Bikes, bar none. Like, it's not even close. And even some of the bigger rhythms on this track are, you got to be on the gas. There's no doubt about it. This is a really fun track for MX Bikes. I really enjoyed riding on it here, but this has to be said. This has to be said right now, okay? Some of you boys that are getting on this track, you're riding on this ARL Supercross test track right here, right? You're getting on here, you're riding on the track, you're hitting the jumps, you're going through the whoops, and you're thinking in your head that this is actual full-blown super hardcore simulator skill gap. If you really believe that, if you really think that, you have no idea what you're even actually thinking. You are so brainwashed, you have no clue what you're actually even thinking. No, this is not hardcore simulator skill gap. What this actually is this is arcade sim hybrid skill gap. That's what this actually is right here. Period. That's what this actually is. This is simulator arcade hybrid skill gap. This is not full-blown hardcore super simulator skill gap. That's not what this is. That's not how difficult this track is. That's not how difficult the game is, okay? And it's totally fine that MX Bikes is like that. I have no problem with that. I'm really enjoying MX Bikes. I'm having a good time with it. But my whole point is there is still a giant group of you people that think that this game is like just as hardcore as MX Simulator was, or more hardcore than MX Simulator, or you think it's like just as skill gapped as MX Simulator. Bro, it's not. It is not. I fucking promise you, it is not. You're thinking that in your head. You've got it so twisted up in your head. You put that idea in your head, and it doesn't matter what it actually is or what anybody says about it. You're never going to change that idea out of your head. But it's not the truth. It's just not the truth, period. And I'm not saying MX Bikes is always going to be like this, because they could definitely update, the physics in the future betas, and it could change things. But currently, right now, MX Bikes is a arcade sim hybrid. It is not a full-blown 100% dirt bikes, difficult skill-gapped simulator. It's just not. It is just not. I think some of you guys, you never fully experienced that on MX Simulator. You think you did, but you didn't, okay? So you've got these ideas of what you think MX Simulator really was like, but you don't really fully understand. And here I am, just to clarify, I play MX Bikes as casually as you could possibly play it, okay? I barely even play MX bikes. I'm talking casual, dog. We're still playing MX bikes casually. And let me just make this abundantly clear right here, okay? I have absolutely no problem if you like MX bikes more than MX Simulator, or you think MX bikes feels better to you than MX Simulator. That's totally cool. That's totally fine. I have absolutely no problem with that. That's all good, dog. What I have a problem with is these certain elitist fanboys of MX bikes that want to try to portray it like MX bikes is just a far superior physics system than MX Simulator, and it's just as difficult and skill gapped or more than MX Simulator. That's when we start to have a problem here, because you're straight bullshitting, dog. You're tricking people. You don't even understand what you're actually saying. You are literally fooling people, bro. That's just not true. It's fundamentally not true. And I think where this whole confusion comes from, right, is, you know, all of us guys have grown up playing all these different arcade motocross games like Unleashed, Untamed, Motocross Madness, Excite Bike 64, right? You know, Alive, MX vs. ATV Supercross, the official Supercross games, the MXGP games. You know, all of us have grown up playing those games. And then, you know, you got Reflex, which is kind of that next level of difficulty, you know, skill gap, realism to the feeling of the bike and all that kind of stuff. So Reflex is kind of the pinnacle of arcade motocross games when it comes to difficulty, skill gap, and realism, okay? And I feel like everybody, all of us can pretty much wrap our heads around that, right? But when you go further than that, right, you get to MX bikes, and it's even more difficult than Reflex, which is already the most difficult arcade motocross game out there, right? So then you get to MX bikes, and it's even more difficult and more skill gap than Reflex. I think a lot of you guys, you automatically get that thought of, well, oh my God, that must mean that MX bikes is this super hardcore difficult simulator, right? But you're forgetting about this little guy over here called MX Simulator, okay? You're forgetting about this little thing over here that completely changes that entire dynamic, okay? And that's the real honest truth to it. Once you start talking about these simulators and how difficult they are and the skill gap and the spectrum of all this shit, it's a lot harder for your average motocross gamer, or even somebody that's, you know, pretty into these motocross games. I'm not saying super hardcore into them, but pretty into them. They're going to have a real problem with trying to differentiate the skill gap and the difficulty between MX bikes and then MX Simulator, because you start getting into this infinite realm of difficulty and skill gap, right? For a lot of people, for the majority of people, MX bikes is the hardest, most difficult thing they've ever played before. You know what I mean? Or they didn't get far enough into MX Simulator. They didn't get to where they was really hitting those 450 only lines and really where their fourth gear tapped out through a massive 2017 style whoop section on MX Simulator. They never really experienced those certain things. So then they don't understand the difference between the two games. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like some people out there consider Reflex as being more of a arcade sim hybrid. And I don't consider it that at all. I consider Reflex just being a fucking solid ass, really good arcade motocross game. You know what I mean? But if you're somebody that considers Reflex an arcade sim hybrid, well, then of course you're going to consider MX bikes a full-blown difficult simulator. Do you see what I'm saying? But that's what I'm saying. It's like people don't know any better. Do you know what I mean? People haven't got... MX Simulator is so deep that it's like a lot of times it's hard for people to even understand the actual full-blown difficulty and skill gap of MX Simulator because it is so deep. Do you understand what I'm saying? It's like just getting in there on MX Simulator and getting really good on a 250. You know, you start mobbing around a track on a 250, you're hitting 250 specific lines on a track, right? And maybe you're on some of those newer RF tracks. where they're smoothed out, ain't got a whole lot of pre-made roughness or anything like that. I feel like it can give people a very skewed idea of what MX Simulator really is. You know what I mean? Which that is a totally different animal than getting in there on a 2017 RF track on a 450, going through the whoops, wide open fourth gear, fifth gear, hitting triple quad lines on a track, right? It's a totally different animal. I'm just saying. And when I say these things about MX bikes, trust me, dog, I am not just trying to hate on the game. I am not just trying to discredit the game or whatever some of you MX Bikes fanboys think I'm trying to do. That's not at all what I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to tell the truth about the game. I'm trying to get the truth about the game out there because there seems to be this big confusion. There's a lot of you guys you're really confused deep down in your head. You are totally confused about what MX Bikes actually is. You think it's this next level, hardcore, difficult MX Simulator replacement, okay? And what in reality, what it actually is it's a arcade sim hybrid, which then makes it completely different than MX Simulator, to the point to where then you can't even really compare them because they're two completely different games. That's what MX Bikes is more like. That's what it's actually like. But you've got it so twisted up and caught up in your head as being this end-all, be-all, perfect, better than MX Simulator in every way, perfection, super 100% realistic physics system, difficult next level skill gap, difficult hardcore simulator, okay? You've got all those ideas in your head about MX Bikes because you want it to be that so bad. You want it to be that MX Simulator replacement. You want it to just completely kill MX Simulator. You want it to be that full-blown 100%, hardcore, difficult skill gap simulator. You want it to be that so bad that you've literally tricked your mind into actually thinking that that's what it is. When in reality, when you wipe the crust out of your eyes a little bit and you realize the skill gap and the difficulty between both of the games is not even in the same dimension, it's not even in the same comparison, you start to realize pretty quick that MX Bikes is really not what you make it out to be. It's really not as hardcore as you make it seem. It's really not as, savage, difficult simulator as you make it out to be. It's just not. And I really enjoy MX Bikes for what it is. But I think there's a real problem where it's like MX Bikes is trying to portray itself as this hardcore, super difficult, 100% realistic simulator, okay? It's portrayed that way. The fanboys of the game try to portray it that way. And in reality, when you actually get into the game and you get deeper into it, you realize it's just not. It's just not. It's a arcade sim hybrid. Dog, you are not going to be able to go through whoops this big like this easily or this quickly on a 450 in real life or MX Simulator. You're not going to be able to do it in either one. You're not going to be able to triple in out of the corner, hit quad lines, whip the bike over backwards, hit these little dragging back into a jump section. You are just not going to be able to do that nowhere near as easily on MX Simulator or in real life that it is on MX Bikes. There is just no way in hell. There's no way. This is shit that shouldn't even be an argument, but it is because that's the way MX Bikes is portrayed. That's the way the fanboys try to portray it. That's the way it's kind of put out there on Steam and things like that. This is the most realistic, simulator dirt bike experience you can have. And in reality, in the grand scheme of all dirt bike games, it sits more in between Reflex and MX Simulator, okay? It's in between those two games as far as difficulty, skill gap, realism to the physics, all that kind of stuff. It sits in between both of those games. It's kind of like you mixed Reflex with MX Simulator. That's more like what MX Bikes is versus just being this way more hardcore than MX Simulator, hardcore, super, next level, way more advanced physics than MX Simulator. Dog, you boys you're pushing it. You're stretching so far with MX bikes. It's insane. The hype has built up so much around MX bikes right now. People are not even thinking straight anymore. They're not even actually logically thinking about shit anymore. They're just getting into the game, having fun with it, getting fast, and then they think, yep, this is just a full-blown, hardcore skill gap, difficult simulator. Yep, that's what MX Bikes is. Oh, it's like, bruh, you are so mistaken. You are so mistaken. If you genuinely think those things about MX Bikes, you don't truly understand this entire motocross gaming spectrum that we have here. You just truly don't fully understand all that if that's the way you think about MX Bikes. You just don't. And I've seen some of you guys comment stuff like, yo, Spence, why can't we just get to that point where we just love both of the games for what they are and just accept what they are and move on, right? Yeah, I really wish we could do that. I really fucking do. There's nothing I wish more than that. MX Bikes being an arcade sim hybrid and MX Simulator being a full-blown 100% difficult as it can get simulator. Yeah, I wish we could just agree on that. But that's the whole problem. You've got these certain MX Bikes fanboys that want to try to portray MX Bikes as being more than what it is. They want to try to push it up here to this infinite fantasy level to where it's just this end-all be-all to a simulator, to a motocross simulator, and it's just not. It's just not that. That's why this argument continues. That's why I have to come in here and keep this shit in check, because it's not true. It's straight up not true. And it's not taking anything away from MX Bikes. MX Bikes is doing amazing things. It's a small company. They're doing amazing things. They're making good improvements to the game. They're improving a lot of good elements to the game. The tracks are getting better. It's on Steam, which is amazing. What the fuck you doing, MX Sim? There's a lot of good things going with MX Bikes. And don't get me wrong, it is a fun game. It's a fun experience. But that doesn't take away from the fact of it's more of a arcade sim hybrid than it is a full-blown 100% hardcore skill gap difficult simulator, okay? Just because I say those things doesn't mean I'm totally not considering any of these positive things with MX Bikes. You're missing the whole point. That's not even the argument. Obviously, there's a lot of really good things with MX Bikes. It's a good game. There's a lot of good elements, and it's sitting right here in this nice little niche between like Reflex and MX Simulator. It's got a good thing going for it. But my problem is when people try to act as if it's way the fuck more than it really is right now. It could turn into that in another 3 to 5 years. It could, if they really get in there and start changing the physics. But right now, currently, it's just not that. It's not the case. It's straight up not the case. For some of you guys, it comes down to you just don't want to accept it. Let's just keep it real. See, you don't want to admit it. Deep down, you don't want to admit it because MX Bikes is your sole dirt bike game that you play. That's all you play. You don't want to play anything else. You've totally quit MX Simulator or Reflex or whatever else you were playing before. That's the one serious game that you're really into. So any sort of an opinion that could, take away from that, any opinion that could make that game seem not as hardcore or not as skill gapped or not as difficult, then you're not going to want to accept that because that's your sweet little baby egg, okay? Everything I can be saying can be 100% true, but for some of you MX Bikes individuals, you're never going to accept that because of your predisposition with the way you feel about MX Bikes. Do you understand what I'm saying? It doesn't matter what I ever say, you're not going to care about these comparisons I make to, oh, hey, I'm already doing all of this on this Supercross track on MX Bikes. I barely even play the game. I play it casually. And it took me literally 5 times that long, 10 times that long on MX Simulator to do that same thing on that same kind of Supercross track. And I was playing the thing every day. I was hardcore as shit on MX Simulator, and it still took me 5 to 10 times longer. It's not even the same comparison. Oh my God. Oh man, some of you boys are real confused. You're just real confused, and it's sad to see it. But it's like you don't even realize the actual true spectrum of motocross simulator skill gap, difficulty, and that comparison to real life motocross riding. It's like you don't even comprehend it. It's either a lack of experience in these different games. You know, you've only ever really played a lot of arcade motocross games, or you only kind of got into MX Simulator. You didn't get really deep into it, into the 450 class, you know, really getting into the game. So then you've got this skewed opinion on what you think MX Simulator is, when in reality it's this other thing that you don't fully understand, okay? There's a lot of that that's going on, man. And I promise you, if I sat down and played this game like some of you quote-unquote pros play this game, and I sat here and burnt 500 laps on this track, I would look even faster on it. I would look even, I mean, it's like, dog. Oh, man. Some of you boys are getting real tricked up about MX bikes. You're getting real tricked up. This is an arcade sim hybrid. This is not a full-blown motocross simulator. Those are two completely different things, bruh. And to some of you guys that hit this whoop section on this track and you think, oh my God, this is so difficult, Spencer, what are you talking about, bro? This is like the most difficult thing ever. Okay, well, have you ever hit a giant-ass whoop section where the whoops are super close together? They're super peaked out and super close together. Long-ass whoop section on MX Simulator. Have you ever really tried to go through that kind of a whoop section on MX Simulator? If you thought it was hard on MX bikes, you need to go try to hit a whoop section like that on MX Simulator, okay? Because they're not even the same comparison. Again, how much more do you boys want me to dig into MX bikes and actually figure out all this shit about it? See, I'm making it now to where there is no question about it anymore, right? I'm getting across these whoop sections. I'm hitting these rhythms. I'm hitting all this stuff. Now, did I hit every single, you know, massive rhythm that you could possibly hit on this track? Probably not. There's probably another one or two that if you just nail that corner 100% perfect, you might be able to hit it 1 out of 20 laps or something like that. You know, there may be one or two like that, but I mean, I'm getting around this track, dog. Like, this is not some super difficult thing, dude. It's just not. Some of you boys, you don't actually understand what super difficult in a simulator really means, right? Because you've only really played arcade motocross games. So MX Bike seems like that next level to you, and it is when you've only really played arcade motocross games. And some of you that have gotten a little bit into MX Sim, or you've gotten somewhat into MX Sim, you really didn't get full-blown 450 caliber level, hitting a whoop section, fourth gear tapped out on a 450, or quadding, you know, hitting 450 only quad lines on MX Simulator. You didn't get to that point, okay? I've seen a lot of you boys, you got to that 250 pro level on MX Sim, but you never got to that super hardcore 450 pro level. You never even experienced MX Simulator to that super difficult skill gap level. So everything you're saying is skewed. Everything you're thinking about MX bikes is skewed because you don't fully understand actual full-blown skill gap to a motocross simulator. Period.